Let me read to you some quotes about Bitcoins. Bitcoins are like gold bars with wings. That is why I and so many others view Bitcoin and its network as Gold 2.0. Tyler Winklevoss. You have to really stretch your imagination to infer what the intrinsic value of Bitcoin is. I haven't been able to do it. Maybe somebody else can. Alan Greenspan. That's the last thing on earth you should think about. There's just a whole lot of things that aren't going to work for you. Figure out what they are and avoid them like the plague. And one of them is Bitcoin. It is total insanity. Charlie Munger. If you buy something like Bitcoin or some cryptocurrency, you don't really have anything that has produced anything. You're just hoping the next guy pays more. Warren Buffett. And what Warren is talking about is the greater fool theory. Okay, all fools, follow me. I hesitate talking about trading Bitcoin because it's not really my forte. But the stars have been lining up for what could be an interesting trade. And you've been duly warned that Bitcoin could simply be the greater fool theory, as Warren Buffett talks about. And so I am not making any suggestions to trade, invest, or buy Bitcoin. I'm just going to use it as an example how I set things up, whether I do trade or invest. And whether I invest or trade, I like to have the advantage. To me, the advantage is to have the overall trends in my favor. And I first look at the monthly chart to see if all is well. Then I go to the weekly chart and do the same thing. And then finally to the daily chart. And currently, things are lining up well for Bitcoin. And I'm going to use GBTC, which is the Bitcoin Investment Trust. And this trades at a slight premium to Bitcoin, but it's a fairly liquid market if you want to take a look at Bitcoin. And then now I'm looking at MarketWatch simply because on my regular charts they don't carry GBTC, at least in the free version. You might get it in the premium version. So looking here at the monthly chart, I can see that the stock has moved on up into this area. It had a big spike several months ago, which came down. But as you can see, kind of like what we were watching for the spiders, it's setting up with a type of pennant or wedge. The top is coming down, and then you're setting up the bottom here at this point. I move down into the MACD, and I can see that the MACD is flattening out, and it's trading. It's above zero, which means it's relatively strong. Down into the stochastic, and then also the Williams, the stochastic is doing a nice smooth bottoming process into here. It's not quite done, but it's very close. And so that, in my mind, means it's ready to reload. We have a positive MAC and a smoothing out, bottoming out stochastic. And then that is echoed here by the Williams. Williams is not as smooth, but still it's in the bottoming process. So in my mind, everything on the monthly chart looks like it's coming into good form. So then the next move is to go to the weekly chart. And for the weekly chart, I'm actually going to go use stockquote.com or stockchart.com. So let's take a look at that. Okay, the 2-year weekly chart on GBTC using stockchart.com. And in the upper portion here is the price chart. Above that is the RSI. The lower portion here is the MACD, and then the CCI, which is the Commodity Channel Index. And I like using this CCI when I'm doing some trading, getting down to the point that I'm going to buy something, trading or investing. It is a good indicator for me. I like it. And then the price chart here is in a logarithmic scale. That's why it might look a little bit different than the previous chart. And we came up here to this price spike, and we've moved on down, and you can still sort of see the wedge or the pennant moving in here. And we've moved on up, and in my opinion, it's going to be moving on down. Hopefully it's going to approach this moving average, which is the 50 MA. And back down here to the MACD. If you recall in previous videos, I talk about how I like a formation where the MAC comes down and it's heading down pretty fast, and then it goes sideways and it approaches the slow line in an attempt to cross, but it gets reflected back down again. And that's exactly what I think is happening here. And I like this formation because what it tells me is that a bunch of sellers have gotten out, and now it's gaining some strength, but not all of the sellers are out yet. And so it gets reflected back down. The fast line gets reflected back down, and you can see more of the sellers will get out. And by the time that this is done here, most of your sellers are going to be out, and everybody else that's there wants to hold on, and then there's going to be new money coming in. Down here to the CCI, we can see that it went down below this signal line here, bounced up, and now I'm waiting for this to come right back down. I don't necessarily have to have it go negative to this point here, but I want it to get back close to here. And I'm going to watch the MACD get down here a little bit further, and then the volume to start to filter out, and then the price will come down toward this MA here. And the RSI, I'm not too worried about that, but it's definitely in the territory where it's showing things are pretty good, pretty low. So in my mind, all of these things are reloading for a possible move. And I'm not going to say that the move on the upside is going to be significant. It's not going to be huge. It's not going to be fast. I don't look at any of that at this time. I'm just looking in the time frame and the price for a good entry point. And everything looks good here now on the weekly. We're not yet. It's still progressing. But I want to set this up for the future, so I'll be watching this. So now let's go to the daily chart. So this is the daily chart on GBTC. And then we take a quick look at that, and we can see that the moving average is showing that things are improving here. Now, by the monthly and the weekly, you know that this was not necessarily a good buy point, nor these two levels here. So here we are. We're heading on down. We just crossed through this moving average here, and we're heading down to this other moving average here. So my potential point is going to be perhaps, say, 11, 12 to 12 and a half, something like that. Maybe slightly higher. I'm not quite sure. But again, on the MACD, we know that this was not a buy point, and this was not a buy point looking at the monthly and the weekly. And though we can see that there is some improvement here. This level here on the MACD is slightly lower than it is here, and then this next one is going to be even lower, and this one actually might be positive. So we'll be looking for that to be just slightly negative or positive. Now, the CCI is moving on down, and this one on the daily, I do want it to go below this trigger line here. So I'll be waiting for it, and it's going to get shaded just like these other points where it went below. It gets shaded, gives you a better indication of when it's heading down here. So once that gets down here, then that's going to be a pretty good possibility of an entry point. I'm going to go through the whole system all over again, from the monthly to the weekly to the daily, to make sure that everything is in line. And the trend's coming down, but the trend is changing. The trend is turning, and it's starting to bottom. And then after that bottom, then the trend is going to head up. So if you don't want to be in early, you can always wait for the trend to start heading up. There's nothing wrong with that, or you can stagger your buys all the way from before to after the trend changes. But once again, this is highly, highly, highly speculative. I am not making this as a recommendation. I'm just going through the steps to show you how I take a look at a stock and figure out the trends and whether I'm going to, or what point at which I'm going to buy. And it looks like just simply using GBTC, we're near a buy point. I would imagine it's probably going to be next week, the following week, maybe at the absolute latest. So keep this in mind only as some constructive lesson here. Again, this is highly speculative. I am not making a recommendation to buy this. This is very much the greater fool theory, and you don't want to be the greater fool. So for today, that's ChewDog Charts. Thank you.